What statements did the Ravens make, Key?
I think you just put an exclamation mark on it for them, right? On who they are, especially for me. Because a week ago, I had them in my top 6 teams.
In your big list?
In my big list. And
I
Paul,
thought it was 8 teams now.
It keeps moving around.
Okay.
So it was like Paul, you, and I believe Michael to some degree poked fun at me having them in there at 1 and 2 in the top teams in the National Football League. Now you look at them, they 2 and 2, and they could potentially be the best team in the National Football League based on everything that I've seen. Yes, I've seen Minnesota. I've seen San Francisco. I've seen Kansas City. I've seen Buffalo last night. Like, what they did in the dominant fashion of running the football and making Josh Allen look like a total different quarterback than we saw against the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have to be the best team going right now. In these last 2 games I'm talking about, because that's what we got to look at, right? We're only looking at the Cowboys and the Bills.
Yes.
And the way that they've run the football, they rushed for 271 yards last night. Think about that.
Yeah, we watched. It was impressive.
It was crazy. Yeah. And you say, well, a lot of that came on Derrick Henry's long run. Yeah, that's part of it. Yes, it wasn't like they had 50 carries. They only had 34 carries. So when you look at this team right now, they're the best team in my eyes just right now in the National Football League.
Paul, what statement did they make?
They made a big statement for me because I like the way that the Bills have been playing. The Bills have been putting up over 30 points a game for the last 3 games. And so for Baltimore to come in and do what they did offensively, defensively to a Josh Allen who they pretty much depend on Josh Allen to carry them. It was a loud statement, man. I mean, you not only did you beat the Bills, you put Derrick Henry in the MVP talks. Lamar is back in the MVP talks. And the Ravens are looking like the Ravens a year ago in the regular season. You know, when teams are declining, it just seems like they're on the rise right now. And I like what I'm seeing from them currently. But to be the best team, you know, you lost to Kansas City. Kansas City is still undefeated. I still got them at the top. But, you know, make no doubt about it that the Ravens are coming.
I think we forget every single year how much we react week to week with teams, specifically at the beginning of the year. I think we miss football for so long that once it comes back, we get all excited and a team is now making the playoffs and then they're the best team and then we just really bounce around. I think they're starting to put it together. Last night was a statement win to me. You beat the Bills, you just beat the Cowboys. How soon we forget that going up against the Cowboys, they were potentially 0-3. And then the season would essentially be over. 2 weeks later, we're going to have a conversation in a second about if they're the best team in the league. So I think they're starting to put it together. The defense looks good, which is incredibly encouraging because as amazing as that rushing offense for Baltimore was last night, the defense did do that to Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. So the defense is just always a calling card for the Ravens, did an excellent job. They ran the ball well, which is also the other calling card for the Ravens. So you have to love what they did, and they're starting to answer the expectations that we had for them at the beginning of the season. You kind of already alluded to it, but the Ravens are now 2-2, barely lost the Chiefs in week 1. Now they put it together for 2 straight impressive wins. Can you make the case that they are the best team in football right now, Keith?
Yeah, I jumped the gun. Sorry about that. Got really excited.
It's okay.
The fact
it was an exciting game.
Talked about the game. Yes, they are absolutely, you can make the case. There's no question about it. You talk about week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs team. However you want to look at it, we could go back and forth and say, oh, well, they could have won the game. They could have sent it to overtime. It was this much of his cleat on the end line. Look at that. Give them what I would call, I give them a soft pass. Because when I look at that game, if they played each other again, I think Baltimore wins that game. Now you say, well, what happened with the Raiders? Something always weird happens when you look up at a team like the Raiders. You're like, oh, the Raiders. And then you go to sleep on them and then they pop you. But they answered the bell going into Dallas when Dallas was looking like, oh, okay, they might be a decent team or whatever the case is in most people's eyes. They went and ran the ball down their throat. Then they come up against the Bills after Josh Allen kind of said, hey, you know, it's not, you know, we don't play for statistics around here. We all play together as a team and a unit, boom, boom, boom. Sure looked like they made him miss Stephon Diggs last night. Yeah. Defensively, as you mentioned, because most of my focus has been on the offense and what they were able to do running the football. Early in the year, and I know you'll reach over and backhand me for this one, but it's the preseason, Joy. The beginning of the season is preseason for star players that don't play. So a lot of them are still rusty and trying to figure it all out, and to the point where now you're in your fourth game, the preseason's over with. That third game against the Cowboys, the preseason's over with now. Now, all of a sudden, these teams are starting to kind of round into what they're going to be, in my eyes, throughout the course of the year.
So you're making the case that they're...
Oh, absolutely. They're at the top of the heap.
I don't think I know who the best team is. I don't think I know. Well, one, I disagree with you about the preseason. I know it's very week to week. That's why we have your big list. I disagree with you about the regular season counting as the preseason. I understand it's how they ramp up, but those games count towards the end of the to your record at the end of the year. So if they're not playing well, that can bite you later in the year, depending on how your season started. Well, you lost to Kansas City and you lost to the Raiders. So now you put yourself in a position where you had to play your best ball against the Cowboys, which they did. And now you beat another AFC team in Buffalo, which we expect to be a contender, which is what makes this a great win. But what am I supposed to do with the Vikings?
Nothing.
Who have really good wins. They're 4-0.
Nothing.
Really, really good wins.
Nothing. Let them keep winning.
What am I supposed to do with Kansas City?
Well, Kansas City's going to be Kansas City.
Who don't have necessarily impressive wins,
Kansas City's going to be Kansas City.
They're not losing games either.
They're going to be in the mix at the end of the season.
What am I supposed to do with them? So if you're asking me who the best team is, well, through the first 2 weeks, the Ravens were not the best team. And we have 4 weeks to evaluate. So do I think that they played an incredible game last night and played up to the expectations of what we had for them at the beginning of the season? Yes. But for me to say that they're the best team in football right now, I can't make that case when you have teams who have played excellent football or have played not excellent football and won, which is in its own way impressive this far through the season. So I don't know that I can say they're the best team in football. They're among the best.
You know, the reason I would say that, though, is because what I'm looking at is exactly what they're doing, which is running the ball down people's throat. That's what they want to do. That's why they went out and got Derrick Henry. Had they gone out and got Derrick Henry, who was averaging 60 yards a game, and then we would be sitting there going, oh, God. But they have done in these last 2 games exactly what it was that they wanted to do, which was run the football and dominate the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So when you look at that, that's not what Kansas City. Kansas City doesn't want to play the way they've been playing. Okay? No. Minnesota, they've done a good job. It's exciting because no one expected for them to be 4-0, and I didn't expect for Sam Darnold to be playing like an MVP candidate.
None of us did.
No question.
But they haven't lost a game yet.
I understand that. But if they play Baltimore head-to-head, I'm taking Baltimore.
Right.
Because I think Baltimore's a better team, even though they 2-2 and the other team.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're asking me if Lamar is better than Sam Darnold.
No, that's not what I said. I said the team.
Of course, if I'm taking Lamar or Sam Darnold, I'm taking Lamar.
I said the team.
I think, okay, well, we will get into the Vikings
right now,
later,
I got 3 teams better. I got 3 teams better than the Ravens right now. And do I think the Ravens are going to be able to run like this every week? I'm not sure. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, 200-plus yards on the ground. You know, at some point you're going to be like, hey, we're going to see if Lamar can just beat us from the pocket, which seems to be the scouting report if you want to try to beat the Baltimore Ravens. Now, we disrespect KC. They beat Baltimore, and they're undefeated. I know it don't look pretty, and it's not sexy, and they're losing all their pieces.
Baltimore got away from their identity against KC, though, Paul.
Okay.
Good teams make you do that.
That's what KC makes you do.
They decided, hey, we're going to run the ball early in the game to Derrick Henry. He's going to score a touchdown, then we're going to stop. They just stopped.
That's
it was
what
almost
Kansas City tends to make people do, get out their game plan.
But there was no need to.
But they did it.
And they wind up losing. They learned from that.
Right, but to Paul's point, like, they played during the regular season, even though it's fake preseason, it counted.
It counted.
And Kansas City is still undefeated. So how can I put Baltimore above them when Kansas City is undefeated and beat this team?
Right.
Yeah, I understand what y'all saying.
So just respect that, and they the defending champ.
No one said Kansas City.
And they beat them 2 times in a row.
Yeah.
You know, so
Kansas City, until they lose,
we can't be prisoners of the moment. Like last night, prime time, the only game left.
No
Josh Allen was probably going into the game, the MVP, and then Lamar, he comes in and does this.
When y'all asked me who do I trust more Friday, I think it was, or maybe it was Thursday, whatever day it was.
You said Lamar.
Lamar.
You trust him more.
I trust Lamar more.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more today. Who we trust. It's not an indictment of Lamar though. Like we're talking about who is the best team. Can you make the case right now? We're coming off of a very spectacular performance. Derrick Henry was unbelievable. Lamar looked incredible. But yeah, there are teams throughout the entirety of the season, which again is only 4 games, who have played better football throughout the entirety of the season.
Yes. Yeah, I got about
entirety.
4. I got 4 teams that's just been more consistent than Baltimore.
Who else do you have besides Kansas
So
City?
besides Kansas City, Houston, it's 3-1. I like Houston a lot.
Yeah, they with the Minnesota.
And you know who else I like?
Got a can open up on
I like Washington. I like what they've been able to do. I mean, they the new kid on the block right now, and it's exciting and it's fun, it's new. But I'm telling you, I'm not watching this kid as a rookie, and we'll go on more to him later, but there's some excitement down there in Washington right now. So those 3 teams, and then borderline Tampa. I mean, Tampa's been looking good. You know, all those teams I named have a better record and have been more consistent through 4 games. Now, can this change? Yeah, absolutely. Like next week, we could be looking at Baltimore, you know, best team in football.
They're at the Bengals.
At the Bengals. I mean, I don't know who the Bengals are. Like, they say they go on the Bengals and beat the Bengals. That's not a testament of who the Ravens is. That's just showing us how bad the Bengals are this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know who the best team is.
Yeah.
I'm not upset if you say that Baltimore is the best team, but I do think that we don't really know, and we are going very much week to week. Because 2 weeks ago, we were like, if they don't beat the Cowboys, the season's over.
Yeah.
And now, the best team
Yeah, the
in football.
Cowboys and
They beat
Bills
the
is not.
Cowboys.
But
They
those
did,
2
but we
wins
were
are
having
like a
that
testament.
conversation before that. So that's what I'm saying. We were not having that conversation about Kansas City. The Bills were undefeated and had won their last 2 games by a combined 58 points before losing last night by 25. So is this a bump in the road or a cause for concern for the Bills, Keith?
I wouldn't call it a cause for concern. I wouldn't. I would call it just a little bit of a bump, a little scratch on the paint for now.
It's a bad loss.
It's a bad loss. They were going to lose to Baltimore, though. But it's just how they got dominated and destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I know coming off with the Jacksonville game and we're okay without Stephon Diggs and all that's cute. It was all cute a week ago, but it wasn't cute last night. You know, you'd have liked to have had a Stephon Diggs out on there running routes. And so, you know, I would still go with the Ravens again if they played the Bills in Buffalo, because I believe that the Ravens obviously have more playmakers on their team, both defensively and offensively, that will allow them to do certain things. Now, Lamar is as gifted as a passer as anybody, but he gets the slighted because everybody loves the way he runs the football.
Right.
So they don't give him his due when he's throwing it. I mean, he can have the same exact numbers as somebody else, completion percentage, yards, everything. And the first thing was, I don't like the way that ball was thrown. Like, what? What are you talking about?
Right.
You know, but it's for me, the Bills got a little bit, you know, it's a little bump in the road. They got the Texans and Jets both on the road coming up. Jets on a Monday Night Football game. And then they got the Titans, the Seahawks, and the Dolphins. So I could see them going 3-2 in this stretch.
Yeah, I think these next 2 games specifically will be a really good test for them, because to me, this isn't a cause for concern, but what it shows you is you were beating up on lesser teams. They beat Jacksonville, who is...
Well, they beat Arizona.
Yes, well, they beat Arizona. They beat
Yeah.
the Dolphins, which obviously was a disaster for Miami that night. And Jacksonville is not a good team. So you beat up on 3 struggling or bad teams.
Arizona,
I know, I'm trying to make this Paul likes Arizona a lot. But if you look through their first 3 weeks compared to last night, points per game, 37.3 points per game to 10 points last night.
Yeah.
329 total yards, 236 last night. Rushing yards, 120 last night, 81. Everything was down significantly, you can see by the scores. But to me, that's just a reflection of, okay, you beat up on teams you were supposed to beat up on, and then you ran into a contending team, and you looked bad. So there's clearly some adjustments. There's clearly a gap here. That is what we're seeing from the Bills right now in week 4. I don't think it means that they aren't contenders. I don't think it means that Josh Allen's MVP run is over. I just think that they have to reevaluate how they're going to play against the best teams. You're not going to be able to make those kind of mistakes, and that's always been a question for the Bills. But do you think this is a bump in the road or a cause for concern?
Yeah, it has to be a bump in the road. I mean, but you said it, sometimes it's not you losing, because if you looked at their schedule, you figure, oh, they'll lose. This is how you lose. And the way they lost could be a little concerning. So hopefully it's just a bump in the road. And I don't think just even having Diggs last night would even help them the way Baltimore. You got to understand, Baltimore needed this game way more than Buffalo did. Like, way more. Like, not that Buffalo didn't want to win the game, but there was more of a sense of urgency in Baltimore, because think, if they lose, they drop to 1-3. You know, they could not afford to lose. So, you know, the whole message in that locker room was like, this is a must win. Whereas
Message for who?
Message in the locker room for Baltimore. This was a must win.
Yeah, I don't think they looked at it as a must win. They
It
just looked
drops
at
them
it
to
as they could beat.
1-3.
I mean, it kind of was a must win.
It
You
is.
have 3 AFC losses, and you'd be 1-3.
Yeah.
And you lost at home.
So, you
They
know,
lost at home to the Raiders, and I knew they wanted to erase that bad memory from the last time they played at home.
Right, but to Paul's point, like, we're looking at it now like it's no big deal and they're the best team in football. But going into this game, if they don't win this game, no matter what it looks like,
that would have been a cause for concern.
For the Ravens, you're
Yeah.
going to be 1-3, and you just lost at home to Buffalo and to the Raiders, and you weren't able to get it done against Kansas City, who is the other contending team in at the top of the AFC. So, yeah, not that the Buffalo didn't want to win this game, but I'm with you. It was much more of a sense of
they
urgency.
had more urgency on the Baltimore side, and you're at home. So hopefully this is just a blip for the Bills, and we'll see where they're at next week.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.